So here we are. Okay, given you may remember I was one of the more vocal critics of Kill the Moon last year, I'm sure many people will start accusing me of going in prejudging Peter Harness's second episode based on the extremity of my reaction to his last one. To those people, I say this. Guys, you're kinda being hypocrites here, 'cause you're prejudging me of prejudging this episode. And I'm being a hypocrite by prejudging you of prejudging me of prejudging this episode. And I'm sure that someone will have been expecting me to prejudge people of prejudging me of prejudging this episode, and oh no, I've gone cross-eyed. My opinion on Kill the Moon hasn't changed, but I do fully understand it would be totally unfair of me to prejudge the Zygon invasion based on it. I still don't know anything else Harness has done, and I can't effectively assume my opinion on his talents as a writer based on the one thing that I've seen. Most of my favourite writers have written the odd one or two things here and there that I'd call bad, and as another example, as I keep saying, I generally like Mark Gatiss, but not so much when he pens Doctor Who. So yeah, dispelling the notion of me prejudging it now, I am fully open to this two-parter surprising me. I mean, I thought Kill the Moon might have stood more of a chance if it were a two-parter. The fact that it did basically zero world building was one of its bigger problems, and this is a two-parter, so there is that. That and the Next Time trailer looked alright, and it sounds like a fairly decent idea, so yeah, I'll sum up my pre-watch thoughts by way of the most obvious reference that I could possibly use for doing so. There we go, thoughts surmised, let's do this. Oh, God. Do I have to do this again? For fuck's sake. Okay, while it's no Kill the Moon, I don't think I've ever found something that sounds so interesting, quite so dull. You say everything about Zygon Invasion out loud, I can totally get behind the premise, a political sci-fi thriller with aliens where they're essentially hiding in society. They look like you and are pretty much well-adjusted citizens, but a faction breaks off and starts making demands, start resorting to extreme tactics, talk of traitors, and become a global threat. I'd really like to know how it's possible to make such an interesting premise this boring. It's like needing to consult a recipe book in order to make a bowl of Weetabix. This type of thing should write itself. Okay, what Zygon Invasion actually does isn't the reason that I thought it was boring. It's what it doesn't do that's the problem, and it's a similar problem to one of many that utterly crippled Kill the Moon. Given what Zygon Invasion is about, what was absolutely crucial to this story was the little people, the everyman, woman and child, and this glaring oversight is a rather persistent problem in New Who that was doubly important here. Throughout the Zygon Invasion, we have quite a lot of authoritative figures sweeping about places trying to find the Zygons, but we never really get a sense of the wider scale of the problem. Here's a question, why does not every, but almost every character that we've been following in New Who lately have to be special in some way? Why do so many characters have to be brilliant and clever, be in command of something, or basically be a fucking plot device? What happened to well-fleshed out everyday fishes out of water either from now or the time period like Nancy and Sally Sparrow? Why do we rarely spend time with just regular ordinary people in these stories, getting to know them and how the story affects them? Aside from people like Riggsy from Flatline last year and the odd one or two characters here and there, normal people that are part of the world that the episode's superimposed onto only seem to have like the odd 5 or 6 lines in most scripts. They don't really get much of a chance to make any impact. Whenever ordinary people showed up in the Zygon Invasion, they just felt like a very conciliatory presence, just there because it would be weird if they weren't. The script doesn't seem to think that they're interesting enough to dedicate more than a passing thought to. They're treated like props instead of characters. Why didn't we, as well as the Doctor, Kate Stewart, Osgood and Clara, also have like, say, a random lady who works a boring desk job or something, who has her life turned upside down by finding out that some of the people that she thinks she knows and sees every day are actually, under the surface, malevolent shape-shifting aliens being taken in by the extremist Zygon faction? If you'd given us some kind of human connection showing us how scary this unexpected, unseen threat is, and that it could affect your real life, it could be anywhere, it could be anyone. Like, the entire point of this story is supposed to be playing on public fear of our society being infiltrated by extremism, and particularly ISIS. But with the human connection almost, not quite, but almost absent, how do you expect us to feel that threat? All this episode does is follow the people tracking the Zygons down, but with most shit about who the Zygons are actually affecting firsthand and who they intend to affect mostly omitted, how do you expect us to be afraid of these things? The scene where the soldier is aiming a gun at the Zygon copy of his mother and the people come out of the church was the only scene where I felt like this problem was actually affecting ordinary people and not just the people that we already know. Unless, of course, you count Police Officer Lady giving us an anecdote, which, of course, I don't, because show don't tell. I just ended up asking, has this world only got like 40-something people in it? The Doctor, Osgood, Kate Stewart, Clara, these kids, these soldiers, and this lady? The world we see in Zygon Invasion just feels vastly underpopulated. In a two-parter, we should be doing at least some world building, shouldn't we? You've got time to, because if you don't, when you're working with an idea like this one, it fucks up your entire purpose of playing on something very prevalent in public consciousness. Hell, we don't even actually see said soldiers killed by the Zygons. They're lulled into the church by some Zygons taking the forms of their loved ones, then the next minute we see that they've been turned into electrified balls of pubic hair, off-screen. The episode just doesn't seem to think that ordinary people are part of a problem that the episode claims is a threat to ordinary people. Are you seeing why this is such a massive issue for me yet? If you pretty much remove what's at stake from the equation, you kind of render me incapable of giving much of a shit. I mean, I know that the public at large are supposed to not know about the Zygons yet, but maybe that's the problem. Hell, in the real world, extremism is fucking everywhere in the news media. We're barraged constantly on a daily basis with horrifying stories. Seriously, why did no one think of this? Like, why don't the public know yet? Why have you cut them out of the equation? I mean, it is a very, very difficult subject, yes, particularly in light of recent events and needs to be handled really fucking carefully, but if you're gonna do it at all, you need this human connection or you kind of undermine your point. That was a problem with Kill the Moon's moral dilemma as well. Since we spent no time at all with anyone on Earth that would have been affected by their decision either way, the moral dilemma was entirely one-sided. He didn't offer us any stakes. This didn't feel like a world with people on it that matter in the equation. The Zygon invasion failed to hook me in for the same reason. Who does your problem affect, and why should I care about them? All we're doing is just cutting between random locations every 5 minutes as a typewriter tells us where we are now, while I'm sat there wondering why the hell where we are is supposed to even matter, and doubly so, what is this new scene really going to add to the story? Just saying this thing matters and having people going places and talking about how important everything is and how it's the nightmare scenario isn't enough. You should have been really tapping into why people are so personally affected by extremism and are so afraid. But all this episode really did was just adopt some aspects and imagery that evokes real-world extremism for cheap shock points. Like, that's the Zygon's logo. Really? I wonder who they're alluding to. This episode could have been doing so much more and it could have been saying so much more about its subject matter. Zygons can blend into society and feign normality. In a crowd of people, you wouldn't be able to tell who has violent tendencies and who doesn't. And yet, for some reason, whenever this thought that you can't tell who's an extremist Zygon and who isn't crops up, it's either a glancing nod every 20 minutes or so, or random bits of dialogue. Like, the prime focus is the Doctor, Kate Stewart, Rebecca Frunton people talking military-type shit in a random series of rooms and wide-open spaces. Where was the psychological focus a story like this needed? Why are you not doing it? No, don't cut to another scene that basically takes what the last one said and just rephrases it. We need to stop the Zygons. Yes, I already know that you need to stop the Zygons, thanks, I get it. Delete this next scene, just put me on the ground among some people that your problem affects. Like, literally, the only way this episode attempts world building is just cutting between different locations and telling you where we are now. How is that supposed to be world building? Okay then, if that's your standard, I'm going to do some world building now. Okay, I'm in my living room. Now I'm in my kitchen. Now I am in my bathroom. And now I'm sat at my computer again. There, I've built a world for you. Really, we could have cut about half of the runtime to make room for some world building, because what's actually in it just gets really repetitive and cyclical. We just have all these really needless and heavy-handed conversations between Kate Stewart and the Doctor about how most Zygons want to live in peace. If one Zygon is bad, we should bomb all of them, because all Zygons are vermin. But these are just exchanges of dialogue. That's all they are. We don't meet people. We don't see the effects. Why were we not shown anything? When you do almost nothing to give me that fear that, oh my god, extremists can basically be like normal people, the threat can be anywhere and anyone, how are you providing an effective political commentary? All it's really doing is just going, look, I know about this thing in the real world. Good for you. Have a sticker. You can't just use a real world thing, you gotta do something with it, otherwise you're just expecting people to react just because, ooh, I know about that. They're basically like the Doctor Who ISIS. And yes, I will get to the passing nod that they give to the little people in the next one. Spoiler here, it was decent, but I just didn't think they gave us nearly enough, and it was a lot more important than anyone seems to have realised. People may say that the human connection I've been banging on about us missing was filled by Osgood, the Zygon hostage, because she's all dorky and lovable, but that's another problem in itself. She's barely in the episode. And the plot regarding her is tied into the Zygon invasion seeming to be under the impression that the world's population is about 40-something. The only real sense of urgency and panic brought to the table throughout the duration is just, where's Osgood? Where have they taken Osgood? We've got to find Osgood. When your episode about a Zygon extremist group posing a threat to society is primarily driven by the same plot as a Where's Wally book, something has gone majorly wrong somewhere. Okay, I will give Peter this much though, he appears to be pretty good at the final 5 minutes of episodes. While I thought it was kinda obvious throughout that Clara was going to turn out to be a Zygon copy, I enjoyed the last 5 minutes, if anything because Jenna Coleman plays evil distressingly well. Just everything about evil Clara just gave me chills, and it felt alarmingly natural to see her holding a rocket launcher. Yeah, I'd quite like to see Jenna cast as a Bond villain based on this one. Again, Clara is my favourite thing about the episode. How the hell does Harness do that? Oh yeah, and of course, let's bring up the Doctor being president of the world again. You remember, he's president of the world, one of the most embarrassing aspects of Death in Heaven. And did he really just call himself Dr. Disco? Why the hell did he just call himself Dr. Disco? Between this and the endless guitar bits and the sunglasses, they appear to be trying to turn the Doctor into someone's embarrassing dad.
You know, last month we had a bit of a party for her, we had a bit of a disco, I joined in some of the dancing, you know. Oh yes, they think I'm sex on a stick.
Okay, fuck it, let's just do the bloody summary. Overall, it's a decent idea that's just thoroughly wasted here by completely avoiding vital components that would have made the political commentary it's trying to give actually work. Which there was no excuse for in my book, because what the episode actually did sincerely lacked the threat and danger that it should have had.